Breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ. Jim Harbaugh heading to the LA Chargers to be their next head coach. That's the latest from CBS Sports lead NFL insider Jonathan Jones. Harbaugh spent the past 9 seasons in Ann Arbor leading the Wolverines to a national title this past season. Falcons also interviewed Harbaugh for their head coach opening. He ultimately chose LA. The Chargers are coming off a 5-win season, their lowest since 2019. And let's welcome in the aforementioned CBS Sports lead NFL insider Jonathan Jones. Jonathan, on the phone here, what more can you tell us about the decision to hire Jim Harbaugh as the Chargers' next head coach?
Hakeem, the leading candidate in L.A. lands in L.A. It's Jim Harbaugh, and he had his eyes set on the Chargers for weeks. The Chargers had their eyes set on him for weeks, but the Chargers also knew that the last couple of years, Jim Harbaugh has flirted with the NFL, and it hasn't worked out. 2 years ago, he tried to join the Minnesota Vikings, and then in a second interview that, frankly, according to sources, got a little weird, it wound up that he was not going to be the next Vikings head coach, and they went with Kevin O'Connell. And then last year, he was strongly interested in the Denver Broncos, and that interest was reciprocated. But ultimately, they did not get a deal done with Harbaugh ultimately believing, hey, I can go win a national title at the University of Michigan, at my alma mater. And so he goes back, and we all know how it played out, of course, with the Wolverines winning that national title. And so, honestly, whether he won or not, though, this year, it seemed a fait accompli as recently as a month ago that he was going to make the jump to the NFL, and it was a matter of where. The Chargers, with the quarterback Justin Herbert, with their ability to, finally bring a true and proven winner to that franchise for the first time in many years. That was one of the leading candidates. We know that he interviewed once with the Atlanta Falcons, and I've reported that he had a meeting scheduled with the Falcons for tomorrow. And while he may have been interested, Hakeem, in the Falcons, let's not get it confused. The fact is that he had this trip to L.A. planned for Tuesday. He stuck around Wednesday with his trip to Atlanta scheduled for Thursday, and that was understood to mean, let's get this deal done over these 2 days, or else I'm going to go check out what else is potentially out there. And ultimately, of course, these two sides hammering out the deal. Jim Harbaugh, the next head coach of the Chargers.
Played 2 seasons with the San Diego Chargers as a quarterback, 4 seasons as a head coach in the NFL with the San Francisco 49ers. Of course, he went against his older brother, John Harbaugh, in the Super Bowl and lost to him. They will play next season, interestingly, the Ravens and the Chargers. Jonathan, when you look at this move, does this signify that L.A., or what had to get done for L.A. and Harbaugh to have this reunion, was it giving him the ultimate power, having complete power here in terms, because they need a GM. So where does that leave them in terms of this decision with Harbaugh?
Yeah, I'm really happy you asked that question, because in my reporting, it is still unclear at this moment just how much control and power Jim Harbaugh will have over the 90-man roster, the 53-man roster once we get to week 1, or who's going to be active or inactive. All of these sort of traditional questions that are asked with head coach and general manager, we do not yet know that. However, suffice it to say, this is a 60-year-old coach, one who went to 3 NFC championship games, who went to a Super Bowl, who has won everywhere he's gone, from the University of San Diego to Stanford to the Niners to Michigan. He's going to have a great deal of say in personnel decision with the LA Chargers. That can be said without sourcing anything. That's common sense. But when we're talking about the general manager position, I can tell you that they have interviewed what looks like, on my list, 9 candidates. They brought in Donna Ponte, the NFL chief administrative officer. They brought her in for an in-person interview a few days ago. They have Brandon Brown, the Giants assistant general manager, in the building today. And I'm told that they're flying in another candidate for a second in-person interview tomorrow, and that would be Ravens front office executive Joe Ortiz. And so the general manager search has not been completed. This is a day for Jim Harbaugh. They have decided and landed on Jim Harbaugh. But, Hakeem, I will not at all be surprised if they don't have a general manager in short order soon enough, and it should be someone that they have interviewed in person. And again, Donna Ponte a couple days ago, Brandon Brown today, Joe Ortiz with the Baltimore Ravens, and let's go ahead and make this connection, obviously with his brother, John, with the Baltimore Ravens. He's flying in tomorrow.
4 seasons with the San Francisco 49ers. He won 44 of his 64 games, a great winning percentage. In fact, the 6th best winning percentage by a head coach in NFL history. He goes places, he wins. He led Michigan to a national championship, now looking to put the Chargers back on the NFL map relatively here when you talk about where they could go next season with the roster that they have. Jim Harbaugh has been tabbed as their next head coach. Jonathan Jones with the very latest here on CBS Sports HQ. Jonathan, thank you. Coming up, much more ahead here. Jim Harbaugh back to the NFL. CBS Sports' Pete Prisco on the way. Weighs in on that move. Jim Harbaugh headed back to the NFL. Going to have a reunion with the LA Chargers next on CBS Sports HQ. Continuing to follow the breaking news out of the NFL, the LA Chargers hiring Jim Harbaugh as their new head coach. A reunion of sorts. He played for the San Diego Chargers for a couple of seasons as a quarterback, and now back in the NFL as a head coach. 4 seasons with the San Francisco 49ers. Led him to a Super Bowl. Lost that to his older brother, John Harbaugh. But Jim Harbaugh back in the NFL as Chargers head coach. And for more, welcome in CBS Sports senior NFL writer Pete Prisco has been covering the NFL for more than 3 decades. Pete, we had heard rumblings about Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers. Now that it is done, now that it has been announced, your reaction is what?
Not surprised. I mean, look, he wanted to get out of Michigan, and the best spot in the National Football League for Jim Harbaugh was the Chargers, in large part because they have the best quarterback of these teams. Of all the available jobs, this is the best job because they have Justin Herbert. And Jim Harbaugh is a smart man. You get the quarterback and you line that kind of quarterback up, you're going to have success in the National Football League, provided you can build the defense and build a strong offensive line, which I think he can do. So it's not a surprise to me. It makes all the sense in the world. It's a great opportunity for Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, what does that mean in terms of how he will be able to tutor Justin Herbert? Because we have seen him do that with several quarterbacks, including Alex Smith.
Well, it's interesting. And you go back to the Stanford days. When Andrew Luck was at Stanford, he threw 404 passes his senior season. That was about 7th highest in the Pac-12 that year. So, you know, look, he will let his quarterback throw the football, but it's not going to be their #1 priority. The #1 priority is to run the football, play power football, and throw off of that run. He's going to be strong on both offensive and defensive lines. All you got to do is look at Michigan this past year. Michigan could dominate running the football with a strong offensive line. They were really good on the defensive line. When you go back to the San Francisco days, really good on the offensive line, really dominant on the defensive line. Even at Stanford, the offensive lines were always strong and powerful and run the football. So while it's nice to have the quarterback because he can cure a lot of your ills, the Jim Harbaugh way is to play power football and throw off of that run, and I think that's going to be the same strategy with the Chargers.
Pete, you've been around a lot of big personalities throughout your career as a writer, as an analyst. You know that Jim Harbaugh is a big personality, an alpha personality, somewhat dominating when he walks into a room, certainly has to command that sort of attention. We reported, and our colleagues reported, that the Chargers were hesitant in terms of getting a deal done because he wanted complete personnel power. Does that concern you when you hear that could have been the rift, and then they finally got over the goal line?
Yeah, because I think the job's too big for one man. I mean, we see a coach, the greatest coach of all time, arguably, in Bill Belichick, now on the sidelines. Why is Bill Belichick on the sidelines? Because the job was too big for him. You can't handle all of it. It used to be you could handle all of it. You can't. It's too big now. You can't be the guy that makes the picks and then coaches the picks and develops the picks. I think you have to go to a different route. So, yeah, that's very concerning to me because I think we just saw Bill Belichick go out the door because Bill Belichick Belichick, the general manager, was not good enough for Bill Belichick to head coach. What's to think Jim Harbaugh, the guy making the football decisions, is going to be good enough for Jim Harbaugh, the coach? I don't think he is. So I think that's a bad maneuver on the part of the Chargers if he indeed does get full football control and over the roster and the personnel decisions.
We know that he dealt with off-the-field issues with recruiting violations, and then the latest with the sign-stealing scandal. And we saw how Michigan, it didn't bother them. They had Sharon Moore step in as head coach, the offensive coordinator for there. Now that we see Jim Harbaugh going back to the NFL, and things are still playing out with the NCAA in terms of their investigation, and we know, according to our Sam Webb, reported that Michigan was willing to grant him immunity in terms of termination as head coach of the Michigan Wolverines. When you look at the NCAA's investigation and that's still ongoing, how might that impact Harbaugh at the NFL level when he's still got this other thing or these other whispers going on?
It won't. It's done. It's over. He left it behind. It's finished. He's an NFL coach now. He has no bearing whatsoever on his NFL career. What does have a bearing on his NFL career is in recent years, he's had problems at different spots. Let's go back to the 49ers. There was a personality conflict with Trent Baalke, who was then the general manager, and that led to him leaving and getting ousted with the San Francisco 49ers. Go back to Michigan. At one point, they were talking about getting rid of him. Remember, they cut his pay because they didn't think he could beat Ohio State, and then all of a sudden he has success because he built it the way he wanted to build it, and they allow things to slide a little bit because of the success he had. So, look, the guy's going to be a successful NFL head coach. To what degree, who knows? The question becomes, what's the shelf life? Because everywhere he's been, there's been something, and he's a hard guy to get along with. I mean, that's the reputation he has in the NFL, which is probably why he wants total personnel control. But if you're Joe Ortiz from the Baltimore Ravens, a rising star in the profession, a guy who's worked closely with his brother, do you want to go there and be a guy that has to make the moves for him rather than with him? I don't think so. So I think that's going to be a problem for the guy who goes in there as the next general manager.
Look, when you talk about Jim Harbaugh in terms of the way he is, he can be a little bit different, right? The way he approaches the media, his responses to questions. How do you think the player, the current player, and things have changed since the last time he was coaching the NFL? I know it wasn't that long ago, but things have changed from a personnel factor. When you talk about playing for a coach like Jim Harbaugh, and they go, okay, well, it worked at Michigan. Why can it work in the NFL with the Chargers?
Well, the respect is there. I mean, you come in with skins on the wall. I mean, he went to a Super Bowl with the 49ers. He had the University of San Diego winning. He had the, Stanford Cardinal winning. And then he goes to the 49ers and wins and gets to a Super Bowl. Probably should have won one at least. And then you get to Michigan and you turn that program into a powerhouse. I mean, the skins are on the wall. Guys respect skins on the wall. If you've had success, you walk into a building and you've won, they're going to automatically respect you. That doesn't mean they have to like you. I can tell you that with 100% certainty. There are a lot of coaches in this league who get nothing but respect from their players, but they don't necessarily like them. And Jim Harbaugh, like you mentioned, is a tough guy to deal with. I mean, he's different. Weird is the word that you hear in some NFL circles when describing him. I mean, I remember being at a game where it was close to Thanksgiving, and he came out and started talking about turkey, gobble, gobble after the press conference. And I'm looking around trying to figure out what the hell he was talking about. But that's Jim Harbaugh. You got to take the good with the bad. He's a different guy, but he's one heck of a football coach.
Yeah, everywhere he's gone, he's won. You're right. Sixth best winning percentage by a head coach in NFL history. He won 44 of his 64 games in the 4 seasons with the 49ers. I'm looking forward to the Ohio State and Michigan jabs between he and Joey Bosa. That's what I'm looking forward to. Because I hope Joey gives him a little run like, hey, we're coming back for you this season.
Yeah, well, I don't think he wants to get into that with Joey Bosa, although he is the boss, so he has that advantage too over him. Look, Michigan is set up now. He left him in a good place, and I think that's the number one thing he did do when he left there. I know there's a lot of guys off that roster are leaving, but he won a national championship at Michigan for his alma mater. What else was there to do for him there? So
Nothing.
I understand it. There's a new challenge. He wants to win a Super Bowl. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see him win the Super Bowl. I'm just curious to see how he meshes with Justin Herbert, who is a deep ball thrower, loves to throw the football. And if I'm a quarterback, I want to throw it around, and he wants to run the football and take shots off of it. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
All right, Pete Prisco here with his perspective as the Chargers hired Jim Harbaugh as their next head coach. Pete, thank you. And you know the catchphrase for Michigan was, who's got it better than us? Nobody! Well, the Chargers, you know, they replicate that. Who's got it better than us? Chargers fans, and there's a whole lot of them. There's a whole lot of Chargers fans. I don't particularly know any, but there are a lot of Chargers fans, and they are excited, as is the Harbaugh family. Jim Harbaugh back to the NFL. More reaction next, and what is next for Michigan? Keep it locked. You're watching CBS Sports HQ.